Are you a lover of all things dark and creepy, of graveyards and monsters, haunted houses and spooky legends? Then welcome to Lore. I'm Aaron Mankey. For close to 10 years now, I've been sharing history's darkest stories with millions of listeners around the world. Tune in each week as we explore the folklore, ghost tales, and local legends that delivered the chills you're looking for. Learn more and subscribe today over at lorepodcast.com.
Today in Radical Personal Finance is live Q&A. Welcome to Radical Personal Finance, a show dedicated to providing you with the knowledge, skills, insight, and encouragement you need to live a rich and meaningful life now while building a plan for financial freedom in 10 years or less. My name is Joshua Sheets. I am your host. Today is Friday, January 10, 2025. Today's episode is our first live Q&A of the new year, and I am excited to be with you. It's going to be a good year. I'm excited. If you are new to Radical Personal Finance, welcome. I'm glad that you are here each and every Friday here at the show that I can arrange the appropriate recording technology. We record a live Q&A. It's Open Line Friday. You call in, talk about anything that you want, ask any questions that you want to ask, raise any topics of discussion. The floor is yours, and we can go back and forth for as long as you want. So that's available to you each and every Friday here at Radical Personal Finance. If you would like to join me for one of these shows, do that by becoming a patron of the show. Go to patreon.com/radicalpersonalfinance, patreon.com/radicalpersonalfinance. Sign up to support the show on Patreon, and that will gain access for you to a Friday Q&A show. We got 4 callers on the line right now. We begin with Kyle in Colorado. Kyle, welcome to the show. How can I serve you today?
Hey, Joshua. Thank you. Got 2 questions for you if you have time.
Go ahead.
First one is, I just listened to your episode that you recorded with Money for the Rest of Us. Thought it was great. It's just a good reminder about just the opportunity for permanent residency in Mexico. My question to you is, if Mexico is off the table for whatever reason, is there another country that has similar opportunity, or would you consider doing something like purchasing a residency on one of the Caribbean islands?
Depends on how much money you have. So when I got interested in this internationalization thing, me being a frugal guy, I thought, you know what, I just do this all myself. And so I got super interested in it. I made a list of a bunch of residency programs all around the world that I was interested in. And I started the process of paperwork and mounds of paperwork and all the stuff. And I figured, okay, the way to go about this is to do the stuff that is cheap and doable. And after all, I like to travel. So it'd be really fun for me to go and to take my family, and we'll just go and do this, like basically country hopping from here to the next place to the next place. And this will be great. So I started doing that, and I secured a couple of residencies, started all the process working and kind of working towards citizenship and moving here and there. And I sat down and I said, goodness, this is a lot of time and a lot of money and a lot of hassle. And when I calculated what I had actually spent in terms of time, money, and hassle, and importantly also in lost productivity, not only the direct expenses, I realized, you know what? I should have probably have just gone and paid for the thing. And so in the past, when I got into this, over 5 years ago, the idea of going to a Caribbean island and cutting them a 6-figure check, or 150, I can't remember what the prices were then, but for my family of 6, say a couple $100,000, and just cutting them a check and being done with it and having passports, I thought that was the dumbest idea ever. Today I look back and I calculate what I have spent, and I think, you know what? That probably would have been the best solution, is just simply to go and purchase a citizenship from a country that sells it. Just purchase it and be done. Because it's been so disruptive to my lifestyle, to my work, to my productivity, and it's been so expensive to do all this that those options are actually a bargain. But if you don't have the money, then it doesn't, it's not such a bargain. And I also have a hard time figuring out how much money should you have in order to do this. When people ask me, they say, well, Joshua, should I go and do that? And I say, how much money do you have? And okay, we know how much money, but what percentage of your income should you spend on something like this? That's a very hard question to answer because I've got a couple of frameworks for that, but none of them are very satisfying of their precision and forcefulness. So what I would say is, yes, you should consider doing that. And probably for most people, if the price of the particular program that you're interested in seems doable for you, it will probably be much cheaper for you in the long run to simply go and do that program and pay for it and have it all done, rather than the idea of you're moving somewhere to start the clock ticking and giving up all the stuff that you give up by just wandering around the world chasing other options.
Yeah, no, I tend to agree. Okay, thank you. My second question is, I called maybe 6 to 8 months ago and asked you about your conclusions for water filtration. And you said you were rethinking it and to call back. So I am now calling back, and I'm wondering if you have any recommendations or thoughts on everyday water filtration for city water.
I wish you would send me an email so I could get the answer before the call. Short answer is not really. I know where to go to get the information, but I haven't done it. So I just use a Berkey because it's simple and it's easy and it's reliable. I don't think that the Berkey is the best. I think that there is a better solution if you want absolute purification, but it's good enough for me and it works and it's simple. It's a little annoying to fill it up, but I feel good about having it, and it just works. My friend Stephen Harris, the irascible, curmudgeonly Stephen Harris, is a great expert on this area, and I intended to ask him about it because he despises the Berkey with all of his vociferous self, and he suggests other options that are much, much better. I travel with another option that he turned me on to that I travel with, called a Grail water purifier. But he doesn't think that the Berkey is in any way sufficient or appropriate in terms of its actual purification ability. But I never got around to actually asking him about it. So short answer is I use a Berkey because it works and it's simple and I have one. And would I recommend it? Sure, I think it's fine. Generally, you don't need to filter the water from your tap water, but if you're doing it just as out of caution, I think that the Berkey is so simple and it works. It's the best solution for many people. But if you want to actually have the purest water, then putting in place an actual filtration system with all of the technical stuff that he will yell at me about that I can find out, but I haven't bothered to do yet, would be the answer.
Okay. Do you know if he has any of that on his website?
Message me. I can put you in touch with him. I can get it. I mean, I can call him up and ask him. He's a friend of mine, but I don't know if it's on his website or not.
Okay. I'll send you an email.
Yep.
Thank you, Joshua.
Very good. My pleasure. All right. Move on to Nathan in Oklahoma. Nathan, welcome to the show. How can I serve you today?
Hi, Joshua. I'm beginning to help my mother-in-law do some long-term financial planning following my father-in-law's death this summer. So I'm really just kind of starting to get acquainted with her financial situation. To give you a couple of stats, but then my question is really just what you would be thinking about. I've never been in this situation before, so I'm just kind of coming into it blind.
Okay.
She just turned 70. They have, something like 1.3 million in assets, about 400 in retirement accounts, and then the rest is in real estate. About 400 of that is her, 500 of that is her personal property, and then part ownership in a inherited farm that they're in the process of selling. So there will be kind of a sale or a liquidity thing coming up. So let me see. I think I have rough. Let's see. He is drawing. Let me see here. She's drawing about 15,000 from retirement benefits right now, and that is sufficient for the gap between her current income and kind of her needs. So Social Security plus the 15,000 plus her part-time income takes care of it. So it's somewhere around 60,000, but I'd probably say that both of inflows and outflows are balanced right now. So just kind of holding steady. So with that kind of basic information, it seems stable right now, but, as we look forward to when, she may have higher, care needs and costs and things like that, looking for what should we think about?
So she is working a part-time job right now. You mentioned that. And does she have children? Is she close to family? Is she far away? Is she isolated? What's her living situation like?
She is very strong nuclear family unit, and five children. They're all great people, really planning on supporting her. Two of them live in Dallas with her, and then the other three are kind of spread around a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
She is living on their property herself, and that's kind of like an important piece of the family culture, I would say. It's really a place where everybody comes together. So it is large for her to take care of over time, but it's paid off, and she loves taking care of it right now. So yeah.
I would say the most important things to be discussing are primarily lifestyle, not financial. From what you've described, She's going to be fine. Just to confirm, she doesn't have any debt. There's no mortgages on the property?
Correct.
Okay. So if she's got these assets, she's got $500,000 in a retirement, or $400,000 in a retirement account. She's got Social Security. She's got a $500,000 house that's paid for, and she's got a farm that is being in the process of selling. She's going to be fine financially. She can live on that. There may be, if there's some kind of medical event that costs a lot of money, then of course that can change things, but she'll be fine. And her expenses can be adjusted and adapted based upon what choices she makes. But when someone has some money saved, has a Social Security income, and has no debt, they're going to be fine. So It's not so much financial planning that is necessary. It's mostly a matter of lifestyle planning. And I would be trying to influence her in a couple of directions that I think are universally good. Now, if she has strong convictions over how she wants to live and what she wants to do, those convictions should be your primary guiding light. I think it's disrespectful it's appropriate to always recognize that this is a mature adult woman who probably has some idea of how she wants to live and what she wants to do. And she's the one who has the money. And so our job as loving family members who are here to support her is simply to find out how she wants to live her life and then support her in that in an appropriate way. Now, sometimes older people are so tossed off by the death of a spouse that they're just engaging in somewhat destructive behavior. And that's where I think we have a responsibility to step in and try to influence them more vigorously in a direction that is healthy for them. So a few of the things that I like to look for, or that I think are fundamental. Number one is her social life. Her social life is the most important factor of her living long and healthy and happily. So anything that you can do and any decisions that will enhance her social life are good decisions. We can see this in the data. Years ago, I read a book called Healthy at 100. And I don't remember a lot of the book, but what I do remember is a fact that was cited in that book that says that a married smoker, a married cigarette smoker, tobacco user, has a longer statistical life expectancy than an unmarried non-smoker. That's the measurable difference that a good social life makes. Now, of course, her husband has passed away. So now she may remarry. Maybe she can find another wonderful man and marry. That's usually a great idea if that happens, but she won't be considering it now. But older people are practical much of the time, and she may meet someone and marry, and that would be great. Regardless of whether she remarries or not, her having strong social bonds is likely to be the factor that results in her feeling happy on a day-to-day basis and engaged with life and keeps her mentally sharp and mentally alert.
Marketing is hard. But I'll tell you a little secret. It doesn't have to be. Let me point something out. You're listening to a podcast right now, and it's great. You love the host. You seek it out and download it. You listen to it while driving, working out, cooking, even going to the bathroom. Podcasts are a pretty close companion. And this is a podcast ad. Did I get your attention? You can reach great listeners like yourself with podcast advertising from Libsyn Ads. Choose from hundreds of top podcasts offering host endorsements, or run a pre-produced ad like this one across thousands of shows to reach your target audience in their favorite podcasts with Libsyn Ads. Go to libsynads.com, that's Libsyn, ads.com today.
So anything you can do to encourage that, you should do. So the fact that she's living in a town where family members are is really good. The fact that she's living in a place where her home is the center of social activity is really good. So what I would look for is, would she like to live with family? If she would like to live with family, then let's see if we can make that happen. That can happen in two ways. Probably the best way for her, being quite young at 70, would be to see what family members could move in with her and live with her. So maybe there's a niece or a nephew, one of her grandchildren who's older, who could come and live with her. I think that's a really great living situation if possible. It allows a young person in the family to be independent of parents, but yet still be with family, and that can be good both ways. And of course, she can consider living near other family members as well, or possibly in their home, things like that. So anytime you can build social environment where she goes and lives with somebody, or they build a little mother house or mother-in-law house, or an an ADU, an accessory dwelling unit on the property, I think that's good. And I think those are good uses of money if there's an obvious solution there. In addition, you want to encourage her social life in the community. So if she's part of a church, you want to make certain that she has the ability to be part of that church as much as she can. A couple of tricks that I always look for is, if she's driving, continue, of course, to encourage her to drive. I would think about making certain that she has an upgraded car, especially a car with active safety features. So if she's got an old car from like 2000, but you could upgrade it for a nice new car that has emergency braking and collision avoidance systems and things like that, upgrade her car to a vehicle with active safety features so that she can feel a little more confident driving, so that she can maintain her independence. Make certain that she has practice using whatever rideshare app she can use in the local area. I believe that apps like Uber or Lyft or whatever the other local version is for you are such a godsend for older people. But in order for them to understand the value of them, they need to use them consistently, because having access to a rideshare app keeps an older person totally independent. For example, as someone gets older, they usually don't want to drive at night, which is understandable. It happens to all of us. Well, you don't have to drive at night. Just learn how to use Uber. So make certain that she has Uber, that she sets it up, that she uses it on occasion, so that when her friends are having a party on Friday night and she recognizes, I'd prefer not to drive home in the dark, she should basically automatically say, yes, I'll absolutely come, because she knows that she can just take Uber there and back, and she's got the money and it's totally fine. So social dynamics, make certain if that doesn't work, make certain she has a ride to church meetings and to any kind of get-togethers that she has, Bible studies or whatever she's involved with. Then look for other community things. Make sure, if possible, try to get her in a good gym, a place where she enjoys going to be with her friends, any kind of social environment, and really encourage her to be social, and then make the logistics work so that she is social. In addition, then we come now to work. So I want to encourage all older people to work a lot, because work is one of the healthiest things that you can do that makes all of life better. So the fact that she has a part-time job is really, really good. And it's good for a couple of reasons. Number one is it's one of the best, most productive automatic forms of socialization. My sister used to say, I go to work to see my friends. And when I was younger, I thought that was so dumb. Come on, you go to work to make lots of money and to get rich really fast. Now today, I don't think it was so dumb. I think it's actually really smart that going to work to see your friends is a perfectly valid reason to go to work, because for most of us, the people that we work with and the work schedule is just our most consistent socialization that we have. And it's both the pleasure of being there and doing work with those people, as well as hanging out with those people outside of work as well. It's a really good form of connection. The work is also really good for your mental state, to have a sense of purpose. Every job that is not morally corrosive to society is useful and valuable, even if it's simple. So somebody who has a very simple job is still a productive member of society, and it feels really good every day to get up knowing that I'm a productive member of society. So I want to encourage her to keep working and to work for as long as she is able to and as long as she wants to, and discourage her from stopping working unless there's a clear reason to do something else, unless there's something that she really just can't do the job because it's really getting in the way of something else that she wants to do, and or it's not possible. And, there's more I could say, but I would say that those kinds of things of really encouraging her and pushing her in those directions, those are the directions that all people should be pushed. And it's the same directions that you push a 16-year-old young lady as it is that you push a 70-year-old lady, because these are good for humanity. Personal connection, productive, being productive, is all a good foundation. And then find out what her other things are. And I guess I'll stop in just a second, but this will be the last thing, is that try to find out, does she have other ambitions? Because where the money could be spent is you want to make certain that she's not unnecessarily hanging on to money. So if she has ambitions for things that she always wanted to do, but her husband just didn't want to do with her, then, if you can get her together and get a couple of friends or a couple of grandchildren and go to France or go to Alaska or take a cruise together, whatever those things are, then do those things. Really engage with them, because it's a really meaningful time to be able to do that. And so make certain that she feels free to spend her money on those kinds of lifestyle ambitions as well.
Okay. No, it's great. That's even just the, kicking it off with the going to be fine financially, focus on lifestyle. And then that's really, both comforting and helpful. Appreciate it.
She can always find a way to live on what she has. Now, we could engage in some more budgeting and things like that, but at the end of the day, it's not necessary at this moment in time. Just make certain that she has some guardrails. I guess the other thing that I didn't talk about here, and I don't want to go too deeply, I'm going to be doing a module later in my Radical Personal Finance Academy on it, which is probably where I'll do more of this. And I may release it as a standalone class at some point. But there's a whole list of things that you want to do for elders with regard to their financial planning. And I'm not talking about, do they have enough money, but just basically protecting them. So a few things you want to do. You want to help them freeze their credit. You want to make certain that they can't take out new loans. And this is really important to help protect against elder fraud and elder abuse. Elders are often abused not only by, scammers that call her on the phone, but also by family members, right? If there's that druggy grandson in the family who comes in and pretends to be all nice, but in reality goes and steals her identity and goes out and opens up a bunch of credit cards in her name for his good and for her good, we want to make sure that doesn't happen. So we want to avoid her going into debt. There's no reason for her to go into debt. So let's freeze her credit and make it so that new credit counts can't be taken out. Then we want to make certain that she has a really good budgeting system where she knows how much money she can spend, and we want to make it so that she always has enough money to spend, but she can never overspend. So that way, if somebody tries to take advantage of her, a scammer manipulates her in some way, that she just doesn't have ready access to her money without speaking to a trusted family member for advice. And then anything you can do to engage in a close conversation with her, to make it very comfortable as you're getting involved in her finances, anything you can do to talk about these things with her and make these financial conversations very comfortable will ultimately be the thing that pays off. Because where elder abuse and elder fraud really happens the most is when people are isolated and they're not talking. But an alert son-in-law can pay attention and can quickly notice, hey, something's wrong here. And you don't need to do too much, right? I don't want to get obsessed with tracking every dollar or anything. I want her to have an accounting system where she can just spend money freely, but make certain that she can't be abused by somebody or manipulated by a bad actor.
Okay, that sounds good. And I'm in the academy, so I can check out stuff.
Set up the spending system that I described to you in the course that we just did right before
For
Christmas.
sure.
Set that up for her and make it super easy and drill her on it so that she knows how to do it. How to just to check and make certain so she always feels like she can spend the money that she has to spend. The last thing I would say, and I should have included this earlier, but get her a smartwatch. Get her an Apple Watch and make certain that it's an Apple Watch with cellular, and make certain that she practices using it so that she always has that connection. And this can literally be a lifesaver for her. So you want to have a watch that is tracking her and tracking her vitals, her heartbeat, heart rate, those kinds of things, everything that we can track with that now. And you want her to have it on her at all times so that if she gets an alert on her watch of some kind of heart issue or something like that, that she can immediately call 911 and immediately have access to you. So this is also really important. Get her one and have her and practice with it and make that part of her life, because that piece of technology for really for anybody, but for a senior, that piece of technology can literally a lifesaver. It is so valuable.
Okay, perfect. That sounds really practical. Makes sense.
Okay.
Thanks very much.
My pleasure. We go on to, sorry, Joshua, I'll be with you in a second. You'll be up after Lauren. Lauren in Illinois, welcome to the show. How can I serve you today?
Hey, Joshua. Thank you for taking my call.
Thank you for being here.
I am also a repeat caller. I think Kyle mentioned that he was. I called about 8 or so months ago, shared my experience with Birthing Center, and also asked about your thoughts on selling versus renting my home. So just wanted to first give you an update. So I was living in Texas at the time, got a new job in Florida, and I'll actually comment on what you were sharing with the other guy just now. I basically took a job so I could work in person because I felt like that is one of my most consistent social interactions, and I do go to work to see my friends. So I actually really appreciated that comment. I'd never thought about it or heard about it like that, but appreciated that. So anyway, we moved from Texas to Florida and really put our best foot forward on renting out our house, so that way we could make the best use of our real estate investment at the time. And we rented it out and are very happy with the income that it's creating, and just that arrangement. We signed actually a 2-year lease for it. So we're happy about that. And now we are buying a home in Florida. So we're investing in our second home, but it'll be our primary home. And pretty much the rent from the other house will now cover our mortgage, even at the awful interest rates that we're able to get today. It's going to cover our mortgage and some of the expenses.
That's amazing. Congratulations. Yeah. That's wonderful.
Thank you. We're really happy. I feel a little bit better about the not so great interest rate because I'm essentially trading, my rent will pay the new mortgage. So I should just consider the fact that I have my old mortgage.
Have you already identified a specific house that you're buying in Florida?
Yes. Yeah. We're on contract to buy next month.
Okay, great.
Yeah. My question for you though is I am hoping, so just generally, I'm looking to get advice on asset allocation. My personal goal is to reach financial independence in 10.5 years, which is when we'll have our first mortgage paid off. And that's just a goal. It's not something that I'm like hard set on or anything like that, but I think it would be cool to reach that milestone and then just have a little bit more options with regards to whether or not one of us, my husband or I, stays home with our kid or kids, etc. I know those are options today as well, but just those are things we're considering. But anyway, I've kind of just taken the very easy investment approach and just invested in S&P 500 indexes or indices. And I'm very risk tolerant. I just kind of auto set everything up, forget about it, don't touch it. And I'm good. And especially because, I have the goal of reaching financial independence in say 10.5 years, but I'm not like hard set on it. My husband is maybe a little less risk tolerant, and I know there's plenty of other things we could be doing. So I just figured I would get your thoughts on what maybe a reasonable asset allocation might be. And I guess I didn't share also, my age is 32 and my husband's is 30. So we're looking to reach my quote unquote milestone in about 10 and a half years.
You guys are rocking and rolling. Congratulations on all your success. This is wonderful. I bet you'll be there by 40. Something's going to happen. Something's going to happen and shorten up that 10 and a half years to make you financially independent by the time you're 40. So your question then is, in terms of investment allocation, what would be a reasonable asset allocation for you at this point? Is that basically the question?
Yeah.
Okay. And does your husband, he sees himself as less risk tolerant. Does your husband perceive the stock market to be risky?
I would say he sees it more inherently risky than, say, bonds.
Okay. So, and basically, trying to think of, there's different ways I could approach this, but I think it's important to all right, here's where we'll begin. The best way to start is for you and your husband to make a practice of just reading some books on investing. And you can just go to your library and grab, a few titles. I really like that approach. I suggest if you go to radicalbooklist.com, if you haven't gotten my recommended financial freedom list, go to Radical Book List and grab my list of is it 10 or 12? I can't remember if it was 10 or 12 books that I recommend that are a kind of a good overview of where to begin with regard to reading. But you should make a kind of a joint discussion where, say, you read one financial book every couple of months this year and next year and the year after. Because in general, if I find that people perceive the stock market as risky, usually I think that comes from a place of ignorance rather than a place of informedness. Because I would not say that the stock market is risky. Now, I would say that the stock market can be volatile, but I wouldn't say that it's risky. And so it's important that we start to educate ourselves enough to have texture behind these words so we can understand, well, there's different kinds of risk, right? There's a dozen different types of risk. And doing something like purchasing index funds in the American stock market is not a particularly risky activity. We have to acknowledge that the market, the equities markets, are more volatile in most cases than the bond market is. That's why we put together an asset allocation portfolio allocation that usually includes equities and fixed income, stocks and bonds. And so there is an appropriate balance. And I'm not trying to say that he or necessarily anyone should be 100% in stocks. I don't consider that to be risky myself. I would sleep perfectly well at night. If I didn't have an asset in the world, but I had a few $1,000,000 of an S&P 500 index fund, I would sleep sound as a wink every night with no concerns in the world, because I consider that to be a very low risk approach. But I also acknowledge that the general volatility of the stock market means that probably about every 3 years, there's going to be a 33% change in the value of my portfolio.
Hiring is a lonely business. Posting jobs, sifting through resumes, interviews with unqualified applicants, being ghosted. What if you could link with dozens of qualified candidates who are ready to work right now with just one connection? We're Express Employment Professionals, your full-service workforce solution. Every day, Express recruits qualified candidates in your area. So when it's time to hire, they have the talent you need ready to go to work. With more than 40 years in the staffing business and more than 860 locally owned and operated offices, Express helps thousands of companies find great people each year. And they can help you, too. Don't go it alone. Go to expresspros.com. One connection, great candidates, problem solved. ExpressPros.com, the workforce you need when you need them. That's Express Employment Professionals. Find us at ExpressPros.com.
Which means that if I've got $1 million, I may wake up any random year and it's 750,000, or it's 1.3 million, or whatever the number is. It's just going to wander around. And I'm going to accept the fact that on any particular decade, my portfolio value is probably going to wander around by as much as 50%, which means that $1 million could turn into $500,000, and or vice versa. $1 million could turn into $1.5 million. That volatility is the cost of entrance, but I still wouldn't call that necessarily risky. Now, if I were a licensed financial advisor, which I'm not, then of course I would recognize that I would do due diligence about this risk and future-looking things. But at the end of the day, if we look at what we own when we own stocks, what we own is small bits of big, well-run companies. And especially if you're talking about a highly diversified strategy, such as owning mutual funds, or as you described, index funds, where we have hundreds and hundreds of companies, if 5 or 10 or 50 of those companies went completely bankrupt and went to zero, it still wouldn't make that much of an impact in our overall portfolio. So I think that people just often, when they call the stock market risky, they haven't generally actually thought about what it actually represents. And when you start to learn more about it and you start to think more about it and you start to reflect on what you actually own, then you can develop that confidence that comes with knowledge, experience, and education. So I'm not willing to just accept people where they are in terms of their current comfort level. I want to continually encourage them to be confident, competent investors. Now, to be clear, there are lots of strategies related to stock investing that are really risky. And there are things that can wipe you out. There's things that can go to zero and worse, put you deeply into debt. But owning an index mutual fund is not one of those things. It may still be volatile. So I would start there. The second thing I would just do is go to whoever it is that you is a custodian for your investments, and pull up that company's model portfolios. Every company has some set of model portfolios. So just do a web search for the name of your custodian and model portfolios and look at different asset allocations and take those asset allocations and look at the historical performance of them and try to calculate, what would this have looked like on a day-to-day basis, on a month-to-month, year-to-year basis, and recognize the different amounts. The other thing that I do personally whenever I'm talking about this, and today this is super easy to do if you just use an AI engine, is go to an AI engine like ChatGPT and say, I'm considering I have an investment account of $250,000, and I'm trying to figure out what kind of asset allocation I should do. I want you to lay out for me 3 or 4 model portfolio returns based upon the Fidelity, blah, 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 or the Vanguard, model portfolios. Now show me what my $250,000 would be worth 20 years from now in portfolio A or portfolio B and portfolio C. So ChatGPT is really good at basically working as a financial calculator for you. It's not perfect, but you're not making big decisions here. You're just playing mind games. And so it's pretty good as working as a financial calculator for you. And then have it run some different scenarios. And so if you look at the actual impact of actually having a portfolio that's highly invested in stocks and what that's likely to mean as compared to a portfolio that's highly invested in bonds, the real risk to be worried about is the risk of the loss of purchasing power, not the loss of principal. If we have enough time in most historical examples of the stock market, we see that we always wind up with regaining our principal in the majority of cases in the fullness of time when we're dealing with a highly diversified portfolio. So you're describing something where you've got at 30-something years old, you've got a 70-year time horizon here for some of your money. And so this loss of purchasing power is a much bigger risk to be concerned about than loss of principal when you have a very long-term perspective. So let me not ramble on, just to say that if you guys collect, say, 4, 5, 6, 10 books on money, and you read them or listen through them together at the rate of one every couple of months, then you'll come to a good amount of mutual agreement and understanding about the things that you believe are true, and each of you will wind up being well educated, and education is the antidote for fear.
Cool. I like it. And I guess I should call out, I might have just put the word risk in my husband's mouth as opposed to volatility, because we both discussed it. And I'm actually, I've taken plenty of financial classes and read plenty of books, and he will likely not read them, but like take my cliff notes and stuff like that. But, this has just been an easy set it and forget it approach. And I appreciate your elaboration on your thoughts on it so that I can kind of get, just a sense of the direction your head is at. And thought, I guess one other question I have would really be just stepping into taking on another mortgage and at a not so lovely interest rate compared to COVID. I know it's, fine compared to other points in history. Any thoughts on, in the very beginning years, I know it's all time value of money calculations, and it might not make any difference. It might make a ton of difference. It's all speculation. Any thoughts on just rapidly paying off a lot of mortgage in the beginning years?
Yeah. Yes. So let me answer 3 things. That'll be the third one. I'll address your question directly. So first and foremost, don't try to turn your husband into a money nerd. If you're going to be the money nerd of the family and he's not that interested, don't try to turn him into that. However,
for sure,
you guys are married. So he does need to take an interest in the things that are of interest to you to some degree, and in the family's common weal, right? In the family's common well-being. That's what is important to your well-being as a couple. And so what I would suggest is, as you may read 5 books to every one of his, but he should still read a book on occasion, and or he should listen to a book on occasion. And so I'm a big fan of audiobooks. People who are not readers or who wouldn't read a physical book with their eyes will often listen to a book. And so just from time to time, choose a book or a passage of a book that makes the point for him, and just try to encourage him to join you in that. This is really important, because if you die and he's left managing the money, he needs to have a sense of what to do about it. And this has happened often in history. Normally in history, in our society, it often goes the other way, that the husband is the one who's super interested in the money and the wife is the one who's totally disengaged. And then the husband goes off and dies, and he leaves you as a disengaged widow. And now what? And that's a real problem, because now you got to get up to speed quickly. And so you owe him the same duty, is that if you're going to be the financial nerd of the family, then you got to make certain that he's got some foundation of it. So I wouldn't try to get him to read 50 books, but if you say, hey, here's one that I really like, here's an episode of a podcast, or here's 10 minutes of this book, or here's a chapter, I want to read you this chapter and talk about this, then I think that's how that's a normal part of a marriage, that he'll show his love for you by engaging with that.
And he definitely does. I'll call out that
good.
We spend quality time over spreadsheets together. Excellent. And he's completely competent and able to drive everything that we do.
You nerd, you.
My interest is in the finances, and his aren't. So,
sure.
We divvy it up in a good marital way, where I take on my interest.
Yeah, that's how it should be, right? That's how it should be.
Yeah.
I love it. Okay, the second thing I was going to say is that, now I didn't go into this for you, but for other listeners who haven't identified a specific property, remember that in a period of high interest rates, the secret to, or one of the solutions to buying a house at a cheap cost in a period of high interest rates is to try to find a property with an assumable mortgage. And so that is still the strategy that works right now. There's a new tech startup that I've been following. I think I heard about it, and it doesn't matter when, 6 months or so. But there's a tech startup that's called With Rome, ROAM, withrome.com. And I've been recommending that to people here and there, because what they're doing is they've created this tech startup where they're mining the MLS for properties that have an assumable mortgage. And this is primarily properties that have FHA and VA loans, which are assumable. And so they're trying to pull all these properties that have an assumable mortgage. But if you have a big fat down payment and you can afford to buy somebody out of his equity in his property, if you can identify a property that has an assumable mortgage, you may still be able to get a 3% or 3.5% mortgage interest rate today. So that's not, you should buy the house that you want to buy, even if it has a higher interest rate. But for some listeners, you don't necessarily have to pay 7%. If you have a big fat down payment and you find the right property, you may be able to negotiate and assume a mortgage from somebody else who still has a nice, juicy 3% interest rate mortgage sitting there. Now to your question about, go ahead.
I can elaborate a little bit on that because we actually asked about it. So one, I was asking when I was considering selling our house in Texas, I was asking a potential realtor about assumable mortgages and stuff like that. And she had actually gone through the process of working with one of her clients for that. And as you're mentioning, you need to have a juicy down payment for that because you have to pay out all of the equity on the house and you can only take on the mortgage for the amount that they have remaining. So that's challenging. And then I think there's just a lot of homes that don't have an assumable mortgage on them. For the VA loans, I believe the home that we're actually buying did have an assumable VA mortgage, but we're not part of the military and they weren't able to, we weren't able to assume it from them. So there's just another thing. And even if we were able to, I don't think we would have been able to put down as much for the total equity that that was needed for the home. So yeah, just wanted to elaborate a little bit on that because I totally agree that would be a fantastic way to do it.
Sure.
And I'll definitely look at the site in the future.
So you are absolutely correct that you need to have a big fat down payment for that because the way that an assumable mortgage works is you have to be able to buy somebody's equity out of the property. And so just sharing that for other listeners, not just for you. With regard to the VA mortgage, my experience with this has been that a lot of people have a lot of misconceptions about the assumability of a VA mortgage, especially the fact that the veterans believe in some cases quite erroneously that they're going to use up, what's it called in the VA space? Their credit, basically the amounts of it. I'm not conversant enough to go into it extemporaneously here, but if you actually look at the VA rules and you work with a realtor who has experience with this. I know a guy that I talked to in Florida who I should probably bring him on and talk about it because it would be an interesting podcast on it. But if you actually go into those rules in detail, on the whole, if the person is willing to sell it to you as a non-veteran, there's no reason why somebody with a VA loan shouldn't be happy to let someone else assume it. But I can't talk to it extemporaneously, so I should probably dig into it.
Yeah. I'll dig into it as well. Yeah. So that's good to know because there's still time on us. We have over 30 days so close. So
maybe I can probably do that. I mean, I hate to commit to shows, but I think I could probably do that. All right. So then let me answer your question then about, okay, let's say that you get it and you conventionally finance it and you have a much higher interest rate. The rate, whether or not you should pay off a mortgage early, comes down exclusively to what would you do with the money instead. So if you can borrow money at 4%, but your expected rate of return in the stock market is 9%, then you should not pay early on that mortgage. You should go with the highest expected return. This principle is exactly the same if your mortgage is at 7%. What is the alternative expected return? So you have to look at your portfolio options or your investment options, and you have to say, do I expect that in the fullness of time, this particular investment option will return an amount that's higher than 7% or lower than 7%? If it's higher than 7%, then you should not pay extra on the mortgage. You should go with that alternative investment option. If it's lower than 7%, then you should pay extra on the mortgage. That is the financial math behind it, and the math is true 100% of the time. However, many people find that when you are motivated with a clear goal, you're willing to change your income and your expenses. And getting out of debt or paying off the house or reaching a certain amount, in many cases, is a more tangible goal that can drive people to actually change their behavior in a way that accumulating an extra $10,000 in your 401k doesn't actually do. So if you find that you're highly motivated and you say, I just hate this stupid mortgage, and that causes you to reduce your household expenses, to take extra overtime work and an extra side work whenever possible because you can just chunk that aside at the mortgage, then you should do that. But I'm pointing out it is not math, it is behavior. Now, and even in that situation, you should still put it at your highest expected return. Okay? So you just have to judge yourself and say, does this motivate me? I have paid off debt many times rather than invested because that it's so clear and it's so motivating to me that I just say, I don't care about the math. This is personal finance. This is not mathematical finance. I'm going to go with what's motivating. And I think that's fine to do. Just recognize that you should always invest at the highest expected return.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yep. It feels better sometimes to just pay it off.
It does. And if it's motivating to you, that's a reason enough. All right, Joshua in Texas, welcome to the show. How can I serve you today?
Hey, Josh. Thank you for taking my call. So I was calling to get some advice on. I'm sorry. Give me 1 second. You called me right. I was good.
Would you like me to go to the next caller and come back to you in a minute?
No.
Okay.
No, I'm ready. I'm sorry.
Okay, sure.
I was calling because I was looking to see some advice on to get some tax savings in the 2024 tax year. Just to give you some background. So I started off the year just a little off focus. I got laid off my corporate job. I was still trying to work stuff out with my ex-wife. We decided to go no contact. So I kind of just got a little off focus on where I was saving in each account. And I really wanted to capture some of the Bitcoin halving. So I started putting a lot of money in a brokerage account. And I also decided to go back to school, or I'm planning on going back to school to be a nurse practitioner. And I'm about to start all the way over at the bachelor. So I've been having to save up a little more money in brokerage or cash or accessible money. And I had to go on, after I lost my job, I had to start using Obamacare. And, you have to stay under a certain amount of money to keep the low rate that you get. And I started just doing a lot of gig work instead of going on unemployment. And I started making a pretty decent amount of money. So now I'm at the end of the year and I, like I said, I got a little off focus, and towards the end of the year, I got an individual K opened. And I was able to get 3,000 in there in a hurry. And then I had put 6,000 in my Roth and 1,000 in the traditional. And now I'm reconsidering if I don't even know if I can pull out the Roth and put it back in the traditional and then maybe do a conversion ladder or something. I don't know. I was just seeing if you had any more ideas on how I could get additional tax savings for the year or anything like that.
As we speak, it's January 10. And what that means is that we can't make any changes to the past year. So there's nothing, we can't go and buy anything that wasn't purchased. We can't go and change anything about the last year. So we're exclusively left with the list of things that are allowable to do between January 1 and the tax filing deadline. We'll say April 15. I don't know what it is this year. But so we're exclusively limited to that list of things. However, the first thing you should look for is to say, well, let me look through my accounting and make certain that I actually have a clear idea of what my accounting is. So what I would do is go through and check. So for example, did you deduct all of the mileage that was associated with your gigs? Did you deduct any other expenses that were associated? So you can't go back and change anything. You can't make any new decisions, but you can still comb carefully through all of the actions that you did do in the last year, and you can harvest anything that you might have ignored when it first came through. So go through with a fine-tooth comb, grab a tax book and use it for inspiration, but go through all of your activities and make certain that you have maximized your deductions. So go through every expense and see, is there an expense that I can properly characterize as a business expense and have that. If you didn't do a good job tracking something, well, go ahead and take a proper job and create the proper records for that. Now, many people there's sometimes two misconceptions. They say, well, my records have to be perfect. Well, they don't have to be perfect. They just have to be accurate and good. And so for each expense, there's a different set of record keeping requirements. But for things like mileage, it is acceptable for you to create a proper mileage log, even if you're estimating it today based upon a good faith estimate. I don't recall the specific rules, so I don't want to go further than that. But if you grab a tax book or go to the IRS website, you can find things like that, and you can go through and look at them. So go through your expenses with a fine-tooth comb. And most people, when they do this, you're going to find some business expenses that are proper, legitimate business expenses that you ignored the first time. Now, since it's January, our list of things that we can do is very short, and they primarily involve retirement accounts. So that's your biggest thing. So as you stated, I would imagine your first thing to do should be to back out the money out of the Roth IRA and then make an additional contribution to the traditional IRA. That will lower your taxable income by the amount of the contribution to the traditional IRA. That'll lower it for you, and that'll be fine. It's not a recharacterization or a conversion. It's just change it. Now check with your custodian to make certain that everything is properly characterized in the paperwork, and get your custodian's advice. But we're not doing any kind of conversion here. Just pop the money back out of the Roth IRA. We're just taking out your contribution and reversing it. And we're still so close that I think this should be no problem. But again, get the advice of your custodian in case there's any particular rules that I don't know. Look at funding a health savings account and see if there's some way that you can fund a health savings account because that can suck up quite a lot of money for you. Your Obamacare policy may or may not be eligible as a high deductible health plan, but there's a decent chance it is. And if so, then you can make a 2024 tax year health savings account contribution until April 15th. Then go through and look at your other self-employment accounts. So the only one that you can do now in January is going to be a SEP IRA. SEP stands for Simplified Employee Pension, and you can contribute up to 25% of your net self-employment earnings up until April 15. And I think the max on that is like $66,000. So if you made, say, $100,000 with your side gig, what math can I do easily off the top of my head? If you made $80,000 with a side gig, then you can put $20,000 into a SEP IRA. You can do that now in January or in February or in March. That's in addition to your traditional IRA contributions, and that will also lower your expenses. You might want to have a conversation if you're divorced. You might have a conversation with your ex-wife about who gets to claim dependency credits, things like that. But beyond that, that's about all I got for you. So those hopefully will get you close enough to your goals.
Okay, great. Thank you. Do you have time for another question?
Sure, go ahead.
So I'm going to go to church for the first time as an adult. I'm 31 years old. Kind of with the intention of looking for a wife or putting myself in position to look for another wife, but really just for, building a closer relationship with God. So I was just saying if you had any advice for me, since I haven't really been there before. I know I can show up and listen, but I was just saying if you had any pointers or anything.
And do you have a specific church that you wish to attend or no?
I'm gonna go to Celebration Church. If that's what you're asking.
Right. Okay. But is this what I mean? Is that are you going to go with a friend of yours who invited you along, or are you just you want to go try a church and there's one on the side of the road that you said, I'll try that one?
No, this girl that I do some work with. I had asked her what church she goes to, and then she told me to come to that one.
Okay. So I would say the first thing you should do is if there's somebody that you know that's at the church, then try to just go with that person and go and visit with that person. That way you have a friend. Now, most churches work really hard to be very welcoming to unchurched people. So almost any church you attend, especially one that's named Celebration, is going to have, when you visit, it's going to have a team of people that are looking to greet you, that are ready to, that want to take you, they want to welcome you in, they want to show you around, they want to make you feel comfortable and at ease. So churches work really hard, most of them work really hard to be welcoming to people who are visiting for the first time. And they also want to be there for you and make connections with you. So, for example, you don't have to give them any information, but ordinarily a church will want to connect with you so that they can invite you to events, so that they can connect with you, so the pastor can get to know you, so that friends can get to know you as well. So, but all of it's easier if there's somebody that you know who's going. So if your friend is going to this church, then to say, hey, I'd love to meet you and go with you, and she's going to be happy about that and say, come along, and she'll take you and invite and introduce you to people. I would say that also the next thing to do is just make yourself friendly and available. And so if you say, for example, hey, my name's Josh and I'm here for the first time. I never been to church, but I thought it'd be interesting to come and try it out. That's a really good opener, because everyone around you would be excited about that. Oh, well, then we'll want to make you feel welcome, help you feel at ease, and help you to understand, what to do or what not to do. So generally Christians we want non-Christians to come and join us. We want unbelievers to come and be with us. And so we work really hard to try to be open and welcoming to people. There's, in terms of choosing a church, I would say it's perfectly fine and reasonable to go to a number of different places. I don't necessarily recommend it. But it's reasonable. So don't think that, let's say that you go to one church service and you find out that I just didn't like this one for whatever reason. There are many, many varieties and flavors and differences of expression of different churches. Now, as a non-church person or as a non-Christian, you're not going to understand a lot of the distinctions, and I don't want to, although I'm happy to explain them, I don't think that they're particularly necessary for you to know. There is what you should know is that Christians of all kinds and varieties have a basic common set of beliefs that they have completely in common. And so we could refer to this as what C.S. Lewis called mere Christianity. There's a very famous book by a British man named C.S. Lewis, Clive Staples Lewis. And he was a British intellectual. He was an atheist for much of his early life, and he converted to Christianity. And he went on to write a good number of books and other things explaining various aspects of Christianity. And he wrote a book that's very well known called Mere Christianity, that was based upon a series of radio lectures that he delivered in the mid-20th century in Great Britain. And that book contains a good discussion of what are the basic elements of Christian belief. And these are the basic elements of Christian belief that Roman Catholics share, that Eastern Orthodox Christians share, that Protestant Christians share, that we all have these in common. And then there are various distinctions that go from there. So there are significant distinctions in belief that separate Roman Catholics from Protestants. There are significant differences in belief that separate Baptists from Presbyterians, from Anglicans. But some of these are differences of belief, and some of them are differences of expression. So, for example, if you wish to be part of a church that has a Sunday morning church meeting that is very modern and very avant-garde and very engaging, then there are churches that like that. If you are drawn to something that is very traditional feeling and very conservative, very staid, there are churches that have that expression. If you want something that is very engages your senses, there are different expressions. I wouldn't worry about any of that at this point in time. I would just go where you have opportunity. And so I think the best thing to do is to look at what church is closest to you and visit that church. And in reality, the church, as we use that term, the church is made up of the people that are in the church. Church buildings are useful and important. And in our vernacular, when people say, "Oh, I'm going to church," what they mean is I'm going to the church building. But the church is made up by the people. And so I think you should prioritize attending a church that is near your house, so that you have the highest chance of getting to know people who are your neighbors. Because ultimately, a church can be as simple as 2 or 3 disciples of Jesus that meet together in your front living room. And it can be as grand and complex as thousands of people that gather in a great cathedral. But the church is made up of the people. So what you're looking for is you're looking for people. And then my final comment would be very honest with where you are and what your questions are and what your beliefs are, and don't try to rush anything. And what I mean is, you haven't been involved in church at any point in your adult history. And so you will have a great number of questions, and recognize that Christians welcome questions. We welcome questions. We welcome doubting. We welcome all of these things as a normal part of life. And Jesus himself, who is the head of the church, he himself welcomes questions. He welcomes doubts. He welcomes all of those things. And so it's good to explore it and recognize that you don't have to rush anything. What you should do is make a list of the questions that you have and the things that you're looking for, and then look for answers to those questions. And so, I've been a disciple of Jesus for a very long time, and I've asked a lot of my own questions. And what I've discovered is that almost any question that you ask, if it's a serious question and you go and look for it, over the 2,000 years that serious, thoughtful Christians have been thinking about the big questions of life, there are some really good answers and evidence and arguments and positions and things that people have thought about to answer most of the big questions that we have. So I say this to say that sometimes when people think about faith, they have this basic idea that faith involves screwing up an artificial sense of belief, like ignoring evidence or ignoring an argument or ignoring a question and saying, no, I'm just going to believe, regardless of what I think. I don't believe that is a proper foundation for pursuing Jesus. Jesus never expects anybody to do that. We use the word faith in different ways, but none of those ways involve any sense of blind, naive believing, kind of just forcing your mind to accept something. It's much healthier to bring your questions, bring your considerations, and approach them. But at the end of the day, recognize that there's only one reason to ever go and visit a church. There's only ever a reason to go to a church meeting. And that's because that's where Jesus is. And so going to church is not about attending a meeting or a religious service. It's something that we do to worship and follow Jesus. And so one thing that has helped me at various times when I've had a lot of troubles in my doctrinal beliefs and various things is to say, am I seeking after Jesus and seeking to be a disciple of Jesus? Or am I trying to fill in some kind of strange perspective on a belief or something like that? And Jesus said, come and follow me. And that he is our leader, he is our master, and we follow him. And that's the essence of what it means to be a disciple, to be a Christian. We use the word Christian now, but the early believers were never called Christians. The first place they were called Christians was in Antioch in Syria. Before that, early believers were called people of the way, disciples of Jesus on the way of salvation, the way. And the reason I emphasize this is that Christianity is not a question of identity. It's not that you're in or out, like you're Christian or not Christian. It's a question of following. It's a question of action. It's a question of pursuing Jesus. And that's something that you can do. That's something that you can do in almost any context. That's something that you can do together with other believers in church meetings. That's something that you can do in other settings as well. And that's the core essence of what it means to be a Christian, is to be a follower of Jesus. So I'll stop preaching at you, but hopefully that gives you a good sense of where to start.
Okay. Thank you, Josh. I appreciate you.
My pleasure. My pleasure. All right. We move on to, I don't know. It says, okay, BM. This is Devonshire, but I don't know what BM stands for. So tell me, what does BM stand for?
Hi, Joshua.
Welcome.
BM stands for Bermuda.
Bermuda. There we go. Bermuda. That's the first time I've ever seen that particular code on my phone system. Welcome from Bermuda.
Thank you. I've been a fan of your show for a while now, Joshua, and I love your thinking around nomadic lifestyle and thinking beyond borders when it comes to financial freedom. So as a Bermudian resident, I have a couple of questions around my current investment strategy and future goals. So although I'm Bermudian, I'm also dual national UK, as you could probably tell from the accent. But my goals are around investing for compounding interest. So I have a property which I've paid off around 120K of the mortgage that included the original down payment, and I've got 335 was the original value. So I've still got a while to go with that. But I've decided to switch my focus to investing in the stock market for compounding returns. So I was wondering whether you knew of any strategies to avoid the tax that you have to pay on dividends, because I'm currently investing in the S&P 500, and as a non-US resident, I still have to pay the 30% on that. Or would you recommend looking into other offshore investments where they might be tax-free? Because obviously Bermuda's a tax-free jurisdiction.
So with you being in Bermuda, right? Bermuda is free of personal income taxes. So it's your understanding that right now that your S&P 500 index funds, that those dividends, you're taxed on those by the United States. Is that right?
Yes, 30% withholding tax.
Okay, is that
and
a
I have
withholding?
To fill out W-8.
Is that so? After the withholding, can you get it all back, or are you actually taxed at that rate?
Actually taxed.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah, we don't pay tax on capital gains, only on the dividends.
Right.
So it is minimal still.
Yeah. What a good question. So being an American, I have always wanted to be in your situation, but I haven't done enough actual work to be in your situation. And I've never renounced my citizenship to actually turn around from the other side. And I've always meant to research this in depth. And unfortunately, for your and my sake, I haven't researched this in depth. But I can guide you in the right direction, but I don't know the answer first and foremost. But let me lay out a couple of principles that I think are helpful. Number one is obviously there are other places in the world that have fewer tax restrictions than the United States. But if you do wind up paying taxes on your dividends in the United States, you would be doing that because it is the best investment market for you. And I would accept that as being a fundamentally good thing. So what I'm saying is that taxes should not be avoided in all circumstances. We should be looking at the total value of our income or the total value of our lifestyle rather than purely being tax-free. Now, you know this, but I myself, being a nerd about trying to avoid taxes, have fallen prey to this kind of wrong-headed thinking in the past, where I go and say, well, it's better for me to go and earn $100,000 offshore because I can be tax-free on $100,000 than to earn $1 million living in Los Angeles, California, or New York City, New York. Well, in reality, no. I should go earn the $1 million in Los Angeles or New York, and I'd be far better off than the $100,000 tax-free. So we shouldn't let taxes be the decision, the deciding factor. We should just recognize that they are an important factor for us to consider. Number two is I would explore to see, is there any kind of tax-advantaged account that's available to me that could avoid this? Now, I don't know. Does Bermuda offer any kind of retirement account, given the fact that there's no personal income tax?
I have a retirement account with work, just my work pension, and there's a multitude of other like mutual funds that I can invest in that obviously aren't taxed. But I've invested in those before, and the returns are lower than what I would get with the US stock market. So that's why I've switched to this. I have another friend who also invests purely in Berkshire Hathaway as a tax-free way to be exposed to a diversified portfolio of US stocks because they don't pay a dividend.
Bingo. Yep.
But if the S&P 500 outperforms and if they're paying dividends, the compounding interest over time will still be greater.
Right.
So it's marginally different.
Right. So what I was going to,
I would want to be more diversified.
Yeah. So what I was going to do, and your friend is exactly right. So let me just lay them out for you. Number one is I would look to see what would be the taxation rules on a retirement account. I would guess that won't help, but I would have to research that to see if I held some kind of retirement account. Now, being from the United Kingdom, I would investigate. You next have to investigate the tax treaties. So what is the tax treaties between the United Kingdom and the United States and Bermuda and the United States? And I would bet you that you have a lower dividend withholding rate from the United Kingdom than you do from Bermuda based upon the tax treaties, because there are some decent tax treaties between those nations. But you are a non-tax resident in the United Kingdom, you're a tax resident in Bermuda, so that probably doesn't help you, but it's at least good to be informed about that. Third thing is avoiding the dividend-paying stocks, as your friend is doing with Berkshire Hathaway. Now, you can't do that with a straight-up index fund, but somebody's got to have some version of an index fund out there that avoids most dividends. I have never looked for it, but I would imagine if you went looking for it, there would be somebody who's created something for a situation like you're describing, because but I don't know. And so by just simply owning the stock that doesn't create dividends and maybe putting together something yourself would be good, and would be worth looking for. And then in addition, I would look for an insurance structure and see, is there an insurance policy that I could buy that would allow me to invest in the stock market inside of the insurance policy. And because we're investing through the insurance policy, then that may be a way of avoiding the dividend taxation. And there may be some other way to do it with a company of some kind, a company used as an investment company, but I'm just not knowledgeable enough on this to be able to say anything other than those things that I've mentioned. I don't know.
Okay, well, that's good to know that I have also thought about similar strategies.
Yeah.
My other question, if you have time, is a quick one.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
I am paying an extra $500 into my pension. That is already my work pension every month. That's already on top of my 10% contributions, and the company covers those already. So I ideally want to retire by 40 to 45. So would you keep paying into my pension, which will be locked away until 65, or would you put all of my additional surplus income into investing so that I have more readily available assets if I wanted to retire early?
Given that investing into your company pension is not offering you a tax benefit, why would you invest into your company pension instead of investing yourself separately?
Yeah, makes sense to do it myself and have the access.
Well, is there a reason? I don't know, but is there a reason that you would be better off investing into the pension?
I think because it comes out of my paycheck before it hits my account, it's a guaranteed way to make sure that I'm investing no matter what.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the purest way to dollar cost average the same time every month.
Right. Yeah, so that's a good example. So here are the reasons that in most situations, and again, you being in a tax haven makes it very different. And I wish I worked with more people in tax havens, but I don't have the depth of experience that I do in other places. So to take this all with a grain of salt. But the normal reasons that people prioritize pensions over individual investments are, number one, taxes, not a factor for you. Number two is bonuses. So many pension programs will have a matching program. And so you get more money by putting it into the pension than you do doing your own thing. Doesn't sound like that's the factor for you, so we can set that one aside, but just make certain that there's no, special bonus program that you're forgetting about that you didn't research. Number 3 is investment selection. So sometimes you can get better investments in a pension, although most of the time it actually goes the other way, that by going to the open market, you can usually get better investment selections, but that's not always the case. So an example where it's not the case would be if you have some kind of employer stock purchase program and you can purchase employer stock at a discounted rate. Well, that's an advantaged investment that you wouldn't have if you were just in the open market. So, or a privately held company that only allows you to purchase that company's stock through the pension. I've seen this a number of times with clients that work for large companies, and you can involve yourself in an employer stock purchase program, but you can't buy that company's stock in the open market, but the company's stock does really well for the employees and the owners of the company. And then the 4th thing is creditor protection. So again, probably not a factor for you, but this is a big one for me, that under like the American tax laws and creditor laws, that money that's in a pension is completely protected from the claims of creditors. So you can go through bankruptcy and come out the other side with millions of dollars in your 401k and you're good, no problem. But that's not the case if you had those millions of dollars set aside. So I would guess that, and then you mentioned, okay, dollar cost averaging and automatic investing. I think you could fix that by just putting an automatic transfer to an investment account on the day that you get paid and be better off. So from what you're saying, I think I would prefer to have control over the money rather than have it locked away till 65, unless you know that you're going to be a spendthrift of some kind, in which case having it locked away is better for you. But I would probably want to have control because I don't see any benefit of what you've said that isn't pretty small. I don't see any big reason for you to be choosing the pension.
Yeah, I'm inclined to agree with you there. Okay, thank you. That's been really helpful.
My pleasure. Final thing is go to the internet and go and find somewhere on the internet, probably in the Bermuda subreddit or something. You're going to find a community of people who are living in a situation exactly like yours, who are working on this type of financial planning. There's probably, I don't know, I'm going to guess a couple 100,000 people in the world that live in a true tax haven like yours and who are really building assets, but they are doing it. And I don't have enough experience with that myself, but you can find them online and there's a message board. It may be Reddit, it may be somebody on Twitter, it may be, just a forgotten corner of the internet, but there's going to be someone out there. And by the way, if there's not, then what you should do is start a personal finance blog that's dedicated to this, because it's the dream of so many of us is I'm going to actually live tax free, but it's in reality, most people don't actually follow through. So I need to brush up my knowledge on this area. You've exposed a weakness in my own thinking, but you can find the information out there on the internet and find a community of people that can give you good advice on this.
Thanks. That was actually going to be my third and final question. Was in my research, I have really struggled to find anything. And I think often the financial advice is reserved for the people with the higher net worth once they reach that phase. But for people like me who are just starting out, who have less than 100K, there's a lot of jargon and there's a lot of confusion. So I think I might start creating my own blog post or probably a TikTok or an Instagram account. So it's quick and easy, digestible content.
It's one of the best things to do.
I'll definitely continue.
Yeah. And then make it a regular call me up every few months and let's make it a regular thing where you share with us some of the things that you're learning, because my audience is very interested. And so once you do that, I would love to help you promote whatever you're doing, because it's, as you stated, there's basically, I've been involved in the offshore space for a long time with interest, but I've never followed through. Since I'm an American, I file taxes all the time and I live a pretty tax efficient lifestyle, but I'm using all of the standard American rules. And
this call will be recorded.
And the other things, the other sides of it, of going through and doing it from your perspective, are really interesting to me, but I've never researched this question. So do it. Start up the whatever you start, and then call me back and share with me some of the lessons you're learning, and I'll help you get started with your first few listeners or readers or whatever you do. That'd be awesome.
That would be awesome. Thank you so much for your support.
My pleasure. Have a wonderful day, Lauren. And with that, we conclude our final caller for today. So what should I say? What wise and witty things do I have to say here at the end? Just that I'm pretty ashamed that I don't know the answer to Lauren's questions there. I should, because that's always been the dream, right? I have friends of mine that I can talk to, but usually when I have friends who have expatriated and renounced their citizenship and live tax free. But usually when we wind up discussing that, most of them are business owners, and that's where a lot of their investments are. So I've always intended to getting around to researching this, and I haven't done it. So I just will say, as my hopefully wise saying, not particularly witty, but in closing, that this living tax-free in the way that Lauren is genuinely possible. I remember being in college when I first heard of a friend of mine who was going to the Cayman Islands to work in their financial sector and was going to live tax-free in the Cayman Islands. And I was like, wow, it's actually possible. And it is possible to live tax-free. So if you get really frustrated with your tax rates, recognize that taxes are all optional. And if you are willing enough to make the changes and make the lifestyle changes, you can live tax-free as Lauren is living. There's about 20 or so jurisdictions that you can live in, that you can live tax-free in. You can follow every law, and they just don't impose income tax. And Bermuda is a long, well-known, famous one, but they are out there. I find that for most people, the dream is not to live tax-free. It's not actually like, what's the point of living tax-free? The goal is to live the highest lifestyle and to have the lowest and the highest income, which sometimes comes with living in a tax-free jurisdiction or not. But recognize that it is always an option. So if you are paying too many taxes, we can get your taxes to zero, and it may be expensive to get there, and you're going to have to move almost certainly, but you can get your taxes to zero. So taxes are optional if you're willing to make the necessary changes. Thank you so much for listening to today's Q&A show. I'll be back with you very soon.